there a party I'm missing?
We are set to go.
All right, 7 o'clock. This is the April 9th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Bowling Green. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Jeff Crawford, Tim Emmerich,
Here.
Judy Ennis, Hobie Johnson,
Here.
David Flager,
Here.
Jay Sockman, here.
All right, the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 12th meeting. As previously circulated, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second?
All right. Moved by Mr. Pfluger and second by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the minutes are approved as presented. All right, this is the Zoning Board of Appeals. In order to determine whether strict application of the code would create practical difficulties sufficient enough to warrant the granting of variance, the applicant in his or her application and testimony this evening must present credible evidence appropriately addressing the criteria included in section 150.107 of the zoning code that may be relevant to their case. The board will consider the same criteria in making its determination. All applicants have acknowledged that they have reviewed those criteria. Appeals of decisions made by the board may be made to the Wood County Court of Common Pleas. All right, the way it's going to go is I will read the variance, then the city planning director will give an overview of the request and the applicable law. The applicant will then be invited to present credible evidence citing reasons why strict application of the zoning code will result in practical difficulties as previously explained. That'll be followed by questions from the board. That'll be followed by testimony from any other persons withstanding wishing to support or oppose the request with statements of fact as previously explained. If you have not already, please sign in with the book by the door. And at this time, if you wish to testify today, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that your testimony this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Stand up, please.
Stand up, please. Thank you. All right, we have one application, but there are two requests. So each request will be voted on independently. So for our variance request, Troy Sunner of Energy Land and Infrastructure on behalf of NCO Properties LLC has requested the following variances. 1, to allow the construction of a 6-foot tall fence to extend past the front-facing elevation of the proposed principal building, which would be 2 feet taller than the allowed. And request 2, to allow the construction of an aggregate pavement equipment staging, loading, unloading, and display area, which would not be a hard, dustless surface as required. The variance would allow the construction of a proposed heavy equipment rental facility to be located at 131 Woodgate Drive, which is an undeveloped parcel located at the northwest corner of Woodgate Drive and East Wooster Street. Director Slayer, do you have a report for us?
Yes, thank you. So under section 150.79 fences, the following are applicable to all fences erected on all property except as otherwise set forth herein in A, except when fences are required by the zoning code for screening, a fence shall not exceed heights indicated in table 25. The next slide is a screenshot of section 150.79 fences and table 25. So you see under the fence location side yard, it states the fence height maximum is 6 foot. However, fences of more than 4 foot in height in the side yard may not be extended closer to the street right of way than the front facing elevation of any principal structure on the lot or an adjacent lot. In this case, they do wish to have that 6 foot fence in front of the building in some portions that we'll show you on the site plan. And the other variance is related to the zoning code section 150.72 off-street parking F, which reads, any off-street parking or loading space or driveway or storage area for its entire length and area shall be of a hard dustless surface, asphalt, concrete, brick, paving blocks, porous pavement, or porous pavers, and drained according to sound engineering practices and approved by the city engineer. Here's an aerial view of the lot there highlighted in yellow. Using pictometry, here's a view of the lot. You'll see it's basically adjacent to Meyer and then the industrial building that you may recall from last meeting, and it's part of Woodbridge Business Park. Another view of the property. Another view of the parcel, and this would be facing south. Here's a picture of the corner of Woodgate Drive and Wooster Street. Another picture of Woodgate Drive. This is one of the newest streets in the city. Another picture, this would be facing east on East Wooster Street. Another view closer in. And then another view directly on the corner again. Here is a site plan that was included in your packet describing the proposed aggregate area, the proposed building, the primary structure, and accessory structure, and then the fencing. Here's another sketch. So highlighted in blue would be that aggregate area. And then I tried to highlight on this screen where you see the 6-foot tall fencing. Since it's a corner lot, it does have those 2 front yards, so it does extend a bit past the front facing elevation on Woodgate Drive, and then again on East Wooster Street. We did not receive any written letters or phone calls. An advertisement was placed in the newspaper of general circulation as required. A site notice was placed at the site. The other notices required by the Administrative Code were posted in the proper time and location. A letter was mailed first-class mail to the tax mailing address of the owner and adjoining property owners. Therefore, all the procedural requirements for the hearing have been met.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If the applicant would like to approach the podium, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Troy Sonner with Energy Land and Infrastructure. This is 1645 Indian Wood Circle, Walnut, Ohio.
And you can confirm that you did swear an oath to tell the truth this evening?
Here this evening, representing NCO Properties, the owner of the 6.5-acre parcel at that corner that Heather had shown. Also present is Dave Spear, agent for NCO Properties, and I'll address the variance in 2 different times. We'll start with the fence. As Heather had shown, Heather, can you please go back to the either one of the drawings there? What is proposed is a heavy equipment rental facility. We did hand out some brochures for that organization or that company. It's heavy equipment rental, not just heavy equipment, anywhere from smaller construction equipment. They do have a mower division, but a lot of heavy equipment, excavators, backhoes, dump trucks, that type of thing as well. And so what they're proposing at that facility is a building that doesn't front, or that is not pushed all the way out to the front yard setback on East Wooster Street. It's actually pushed quite a ways to the north, with the building facing the Woodgate Drive frontage of the property. So we've chosen to push that further to the north, keep it away from the intersection. There'll be 2 driveways as proposed off of Woodgate. And then the area to the south would be for, part of that would be for display of the rental equipment, and then also for use for the circulation, drop-off, pickup, staging, maintenance, et cetera, of the equipment. Heather, could you go back to the colored one that shows the area use? Right there, that's perfect, thank you. So the first request is for the fence on the, primarily on the southern side of the property. It does work up some along Woodgate. We're asking for a 6-foot security fence, or 6-foot fence versus 4 for security purposes. The rest of the facility will have a 6-foot fence. It's a lot of high-dollar construction equipment that will be on site. 4-foot fence doesn't provide adequate security. My understanding is with the zoning code, had we pushed the building all the way to the kind of the southeast corner, then that 6-foot fence height would be fine. But again, we opted to push the building to the north. So we are requesting that the 6 foot in lieu of the 4 foot. Would you like to act on that before I go into the presentation on the aggregate?
Yeah, let's just, if you guys have questions about the fence.
No, I understand the fence.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't, I'm probable, first of all, welcome, and glad that you are interested in establishing something in Bowling Green, so we thank you for that. And what I'm about to question you about is not in the domain of the zoning board, but of a concern nevertheless. When you speak of, you move the building position further to the north, what it causes now is all that heavy equipment to be lined up along what we call Wooster Street. And with all due respects, it's not the prettiest of things to see. And that is one of the main ways in which we're coming into this town from the east. And I'm wondering why we couldn't solve some of this problem if we had our building a little bit more towards the south and flipped the way the property is being developed now.
The equipment is displayed for, for purposes, for visibility, just as you would do with a car dealership.
Sure.
This organization has 3 other facilities in Ohio, Sandusky, Norwalk, and I believe Sheffield Lake. And the Sandusky facility is the closest here, and you may have been by it. It's immediately north of the Kalahari facility.
I have seen that.
So very similar. It's pushed out to a fairly major highway. The equipment is displayed, so potential customers can see it, similar to what a car dealership does. Dave, I don't know if you want to speak to that question. I mean, that is part of your marketing, is to put that out there, have it be visible.
That would be, yes.
You have to come to
If
the,
you, if you could just come to the podium
Sure.
as well and state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Dave Spear, owner, NCO Properties, in this proposal. Also, as we discussed, I believe why we moved the building a little bit to the north was because of the drive that goes up to Woodgate. It allows it a little bit more back to the north to get away from right at that approach area. So it was asked if we could, move it back a little bit further to the north to allow more of that access area right there at Woodgate, which would actually be coming out to the south from that drive.
and I thank you. I understand marketing, that would be the logical thing that you're doing as far as the setup and the display of your equipment. It's just that it is not the prettiest of equipment often. And I visited your Sandusky facility.
Okay.
And I just would like to suggest that we consider what you're doing to the landscape of that area, as that's the entrance into the industrial park. And I understand that in an industrial park, things like this are built. It's just that this is at the entrance and it's right along, a state highway that comes right into our town.
Yeah, could you describe to us what the display would look like? Is it like are there like mounds to drive it on, or is it just parked out there? What is the display? What does it kind of entail?
I think sort of the brochure.
Yeah,
Would-
Heather, could you
I'll give you
flip it? There you
a
go.
view.
Go one more, possibly. So probably the picture in the upper left is an example of the equipment, the bigger equipment that would be out towards the south. On the previous page, probably the first page you've got on there, the smaller equipment typically is up front, out near the building. To touch back also on the landscaping, the Sandusky facility wasn't required to have any substantial landscaping in the front. We do have on both frontages on this project a requirement for a landscape buffer It is shown on there. It may be a little hard to see on your site plan, but there's a landscape buffer required all along the front of that setback where the fence is at. And in addition, we've got double frontage. So we've got a large number of street trees that are required for that project as well. So there will be quite a bit of landscaping going in as part of that project.
All right, back to the fence.
Back to the fence.
I don't have a problem with it as long as, we just did the FedEx one, like, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. Or maybe longer than that, I don't remember. And it's, similar 6-foot fence. I understand the security of the facility. I would, I don't have a problem with that.
The fence, to me, doesn't seem like it would alter the character of the neighborhood. It provides extra security. I don't have any problems with the fence.
Hey, Hobie, if you look in here, that's an example of what the storage area would probably look like.
Yes. I
This
visited
this
that.
is, I think, probably more accurate reflection than what the one you had up there. Which
Yeah,
is,
that's actually the Ohio Cat facility up in Perrysburg. So that's looking at it from 475.
Roger.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I had
Oh, no,
it in there as a-
it's one you gave us.
Yeah, that was, and it was an example. Really more for the next issue. That was the example there, but that is the new Ohio Cat facility that you see off of I-475 in Perrysburg.
I don't believe, Mr. Johnson asked if we move the building a little bit to the south. I don't think that would be an issue. I mean, that could be done that way. It was just the way I believe it was to give a little bit more turning radius coming back out of Woodgate, coming back up to Wooster Street. There's a little bit more of an area there. That's why we did place it back a little further to the north.
It was actually a request from one of our department heads to do that. We have access management policies and guidelines that do have a spacing requirement based on intersections and driveways. And the request was to move it back further to comply more so with our access management policies and guidelines. So that is what this site plan is reflecting, that request.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, what we're gonna do now is let's discuss the second variance, and then we're gonna vote on both the variances after this and after public discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll talk to us about this concrete or the dustless surface.
Okay, thank you. So second request is to construct an area of aggregate pavement in lieu of asphalt or concrete. So what I've shown here is an area use sketch of the facility. And the area in question is basically the back half, roughly half of the pavement area. So the equipment that comes in and out, whether it's brought in by the rental facility drivers and their trucks, or whether it's customers that are renting it and bringing it in, the smaller equipment typically would come in to the north and turn south behind the building and then exit to the south. So everything to the right of that yellow would be hard pavement surface, either asphalt or concrete. The area to the left of that is what we're asking for the variance for the aggregate pavement. Essentially, the larger equipment, the semis, the low boys, would come in and they would drop the larger equipment in the back, and typically that's your backhoes, your bulldozers, your heavier equipment. They've got the large metal tracks. Essentially, as they drop the front of a low boy and they drive off a backhoe, or they drive off an excavator and they turn, the metal tracks tear up the pavement and the pavement tears up the metal tracks. So what we're asking for is a variance for this back part to do aggregate. I've talked in length to Dave about the surfacing and what can be done to minimize the dustless, the dust coming from that, because I know that's the primary concern, the primary reason for the ordinance. And what we're proposing is an aggregate base of other material, but topping it off with a washed 57 surface course of 1.5 to 2 inches. That's an open graded stone. You will order washed, so it's free of fines. And so essentially, you've got it's a larger, maybe 3/4 inch type of aggregate, doesn't have all the dusty fines in it. And then what happens, if you've got an area that gets contaminated with mud coming in off of a piece of equipment, you can simply scrape off that top 1.5 or 2 inches and replace it with new. Obviously, you've got a yard full of construction equipment here, so it's easily accomplished. So again, the request is for that back half, and essentially it's because the type of equipment and the circulation on there, just again, it's hard on the pavement, and the pavement is hard on the equipment.
All right, does anyone have any questions about the pavement?
Yeah, I actually do. So Heather, can you go back to the one that shows down where Myers is in relation to that? Please.
Photographs?
Yes, please. I think you had a better one. Got one more?
I think it was a-
Well, that's good enough. It's showing, so where the back end and all that gravel and that aggregate is in line with that parking and a grocery store. Is there, Heather, maybe you can answer this because I'm not seeing it on here anywhere, the requirement for any kind of trees or something that could break up that, you see it on farm fields and stuff like that, where they'll do a double row of arborvitae to basically pick up that dust? Is it
There's not a zoning code requirement for that.
for that? Would you guys, because of the close proximity, from what it looks like, it's really a couple hundred yards at the very most.
So you're suggesting along the west property line?
Correct.
Installing
Yeah, a double
row
row
of
of
double-
arborvitae or
of
something
arborvitaes.
that would pick up that dust. Because you will have dust no matter what you do, if you scrape it, whatever, you're still going to end up with that happening. And that's now flowing over into where customers go in and out of a grocery store.
Heather, can you, I'm sorry, I should take your clicker. Could you go back to the site plan, any one of them? So Dave, what's being requested, basically, if your rear building gets constructed, you wouldn't need to do it because you've got that
building.
screen, I'm assuming. But until that time, basically a double row of evergreen arborvitaes along that west property line to provide a wind barrier to the.
And I actually think primarily, maybe just where the stone is and go just a little bit beyond it, not the whole property line. I don't think you need to go
Just along
that.
the-
Because that's other hard surface and it's lawn equipment and small stuff. You're talking just the area where you're going to be on that gravel and you're going to end up with that dust, no matter what you do.
And you're primarily concerned with the west side.
Well, I know there's a couple other manufacturing companies back there that do. My wife works at one that produces labels back there. And, dust isn't good for their area. And there's no other, drove through there tonight again, there's no other facilities back in that industrial park that, have a dustless surface. They're all paved. And so that's one of my biggest things. I understand where equipment, is hard on that.
What we have done in our other facilities is we have used the 57 stone. At one time, we started out with like a 304 that has the dust in it. Well, it did create that little dust problem, but we ended up going with the 57s without the dust. And that seems like it took care of most of the problem, actually, that way, with that 57s to cover it. And I think over to the far left, Troy has a detail that shows that,
Right.
that type of makeup.
Have you considered putting a material in, weaving it through the fencing, which would then block some of that dust, that, if it did exist, from getting past your property? And that would also provide a visual barrier as well.
Would that be, again, on the west side? Is that the primary area of concern?
Yes, I'm not asking that you circle the entire property with that, but I do realize, as has been pointed out, that's a shopping area behind there, and there's going to be plants out there as well as people coming in and out, buying groceries.
Dave, are you suggesting, is it an option, the arborvitae versus the screening? Or both? The issue with the screening is we're in Bowling Green, it blows loose.
Understood.
Quite often. The arborvitae is probably aesthetically a better product and, longevity wise, I think it would end up probably in the long run being a better solution.
Oh, there is a
than the
maintenance
screening.
issue with fencing as well, so that's the reason why that's not the best of suggestions. It's just another idea for you to consider.
And would you guys consider adding vegetation, western property line?
Well, that's why, is that the concern, is the west side along that property by Myers, right there?
It is for me, at least.
Are you going to be cleaning that ditch that's behind there, or is that not on your property?
There's a water catchment ditch there. I think that belongs to Myers.
Is that the large pond there or
No, there's a tree line that's really a ditch line. I don't know.
farther to the north? Is that,
It's further to the west of it's on the west side of your property.
yeah, I think we've got farm field to the west property
We
line.
do,
Yeah.
yes, we do.
So it's not on this. There is an area of trees on this property
Right
where there's
there.
an old homestead. But then there's a field yet west of that. Our stormwater discharge will be to the storm sewer that's along Booster Street.
So would you consider putting in a buffer in between basically your parcel and Meyer?
Which is the plants you're referring to?
The double row of arborvitae.
Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't be a problem, no.
And do we need to amend our variance to?
We can
Okay.
approve with conditions.
Okay.
So do we have any other questions? No, okay. I think you guys are all right to sit down. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this matter this evening? No? This time, we'll have board discussions. Let's talk about the first variance first, the fence. Does anyone have any strong feelings about the fence? No? All right, let's talk about the aggregate pavement.
Yeah, I said, my thing is just, and I think, I agree with what you're saying, Obi, with the stuff in there. For a better visual and looks, a double row of arborvitaes as they grow up, they'll end up, 10, 12 foot tall, and we'll pick up a lot of that. You see it used a lot near houses where they're doing farming. And to me, that's a good ask and a way to solve that problem with whatever dust gets going through there. And I understand the fence that you threw up, that would work too.
No, I think that does seem like a decent compromise. I don't believe that this project would change the character of the neighborhood or anything, but the second request, in my opinion, is fairly substantial. However, they have made some mitigating steps to try to alleviate the chance of variance with the aggregate instead of stone and some of the placements of the building. If you look at the proposed plot that's unimproved compared to the entire parcel, it makes it a little bit less substantial. I think I would be in favor of approval with the condition of an additional vegetation line on that part of the parcel.
Where do we want to require it? From the very back end, 3/4 of the way up, or where are we looking at? Because, it would look nice if the whole thing were like that, but I'm not sure that to achieve what we're looking for, to stop the dust, is necessary to go all the way to the front end. Just going maybe 1/4 of the way through the non-tract, or even halfway, would be substantial enough to me to satisfy what I think we want.
So you're saying halfway from halfway.
From the back end, halfway up through the non-tract display area, that fence line in there, to pick that up. I don't know if they'd have to go and mark it off or whatever.
Okay, is that an acceptable proposal?
The proposal is what now?
The double row of arborvitae.
I mean, but how far?
From the very back end, if you look on your,
Okay.
the sheet, the very back end where that water, looks like the water containment
Right.
management area, all the way up, head towards Woodgate Road Drive, and go halfway to the non-tracked equipment area.
Right.
See what I'm talking about, Ovi?
Right,
And I would assume that would be adequate, because then at the front of it has to have trees and plants of various kinds up there, correct, Heather?
Street trees.
Yeah, right. So that would kind of make that somewhat uniform through there, in my opinion.
Gentlemen, please keep in mind that I can't, when we look at the view, I can't be blocking that because I have that equipment there I'd like to show, but I'm willing to whatever we can address for the dust factor.
Heather, would you help me make sure that I know what I'm voting for here? The aggregate area, the non-paved area, on your color chart, certainly is the yellow. Okay, but is it also the blue area?
No, that's,
The what area?
The blue area, the area that fronts Booster?
So I really think this sketch
That other one shows it.
shows
right there.
it best.
Colored picture?
The one that's got the blue around the heavy
circle.
equipment loading and staging area, that would be the gravel area.
Right, that's what I want to make sure.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Right, if we're done discussion, I'd be.
But make sure we're talking the same thing. I apologize.
No, no, no.
Okay, so to the west area, where Myers is at. Yeah, that fence line where Myers is at is where we're talking. Is that what you're gathering also? Make sure we're on the same sheet of music?
The west property line, yes.
Are we talking the whole property line?
No, just where the aggregate is at. So for the
Aggregate and a small piece forward, just to be able to pick it up.
How tall do these elongators get?
They can get to 10, 12 foot tall.
Pardon me?
10 to 12 foot tall, they can. But again, the frontage along Woodgate and then the Wooster is not really affected by that. It's just that side piece between you and Myers.
What would be the mature height? Because you can get that.
They can get up to 10 to 12 foot.
What's that?
They can get up to 10 to 12 foot.
Right, but we can specify a species that stays shorter. So what would be what would be the maximum height, or what would be the height you would want them to reach? I mean, we can plant arborvitae that will only get to be 6 feet, for example. Would that be adequate?
I'm not sure that would stop your dust problem. Wind flows it. It may, although it may pick up. I'm not an expert on that, I'll be very honest with you. Anybody else got anything to bleed into this?
All right, well, for the first variance, would anyone like to make any motions?
Would you read it, please?
Yes. First variance is to allow the construction of a 6-foot-tall fence to extend past the front-facing elevation of the proposed principal building, which would be 2 feet taller than allowed.
move to approve.
Mr. Stockman moves to approve. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Fluger. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Tim Emmer,
Yes.
Kobe Johnson,
Yes,
David Flager,
Yes.
Jay Sockman, yes.
All right, your first variance has been granted. Would anyone like to make any motions on the second variance? You want to read that one too? To allow the construction of an aggregate pavement equipment staging, loading and unloading and display area, which would not be a hard dustless surface as required. So we can either motion to approve, motion to deny, or motion to approve with
Conditions. Motion to approve with conditions that they place the arborvitaes along the fence line that is adjacent to Myers across the entire aggregate area that they want to put the stone and come forward 15-foot additional towards Woodgate, that area.
Okay, so the proposal is to approve under the condition that a vegetation screen is added from,
Fence line, the fence line of Meyer, full aggregate area
Full aggregate area plus
plus
another 15-foot, just something that's going to catch that.
15 foot
Yeah.
to the north, not toward Worcester.
It's on the north side,
Okay.
the western area.
It's on the west side, but
All right.
The west side and the north side for 15 feet.
not the north side.
That's what he's saying.
all right, so that motion is moved by Mr. Pfluger. Is there a second?
Point of question, I'm sorry. You said the additional 15 feet would go to the north or
It'll be
south?
on the
It would-
west side, north of the aggregate,
Correct,
what you're saying.
correct.
Okay, so
what I
not
got.
closer to Worcester. I just want to
No,
make sure.
correct.
Okay,
It's not on Rooster. It would be on the north side of this picture, and it would be in the area where they have an arrow pointing on that side of the fence.
okay. And you're not
15
getting
feet.
any specifics on the type of,
Probably need to put at least a height restriction or something in there, that it's a double barrier of the arborvitae's work, and they work well. I don't know of all the, I'm not an arborist, so I don't know all the varieties of that. And I understand your concern is you don't want to block the view. I understand that completely. But you also have to consider that grocery area and where people are shopping.
But it's not on the south side, which is where he's gonna be staging the equipment.
Right, it's above it.
Okay, is there a second for that motion then?
Oh, hold on a second.
Is there any way we
I'll
could
second.
get,
We got to make sure we have this.
right, is there any way we could get feedback from the
Arborist,
arborist? No, not first, but at some point to say, hey, this is what a good type of vegetation, because they're asking the same thing.
yeah, we definitely have our arborists look at all of our site plans that include landscaping. I'm just looking at from our aspect, how we enforce this and make sure it's enforced
Right.
according to the conditions that you want. So it's almost easiest if you have I want a minimum height planted or a maximum height. And then we could talk to the arborist about the types and work with her.
May I suggest then that we suggest that the initial plantings be 4 foot and grow to a height of 8 feet?
Yeah, 4 to 8 foot, that seems reasonable to me.
4 to 8 feet?
4 to 8 foot, starting at 4, going to 8. You know, because it
That
doesn't
would give
take
you
long.
several years.
It doesn't take long to get that height. Maybe
Yeah,
2
several years before it get to be 8 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just write these conditions down.
so I got it written down.
Okay, okay. We just go over them again for us?
Double row of arborvitae along the fence line to the west, where Meyer is. The full aggregate area plus 15 feet past to the north of the aggregate on the west side. Starting at 4 foot, going to 8 foot.
Okay, that is the proposal.
Correct.
Is that good?
Yes.
Is there a second for the proposal?
Yeah, I second.
Right. Will you call the roll, please?
Tim Emmer,
Yes.
Obie Johnson,
Yes,
David Flager,
Yes.
Jay Sockman, no.
Okay, your variance has been approved with condition, so you have to meet with the zoning department. All right, that's all for today. We open it up for public discussion. If anyone, public would like to say anything? If not, anything from the board for the good of the order? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.